Okay, I accidentally touched the mouse, and so I have to do this over again. And I don't even remember what I said. I think I talked about going to, oh, let me see. Oh, yeah, Martin Luther King Way. I actually had to go down Martin Luther King Way today on my commute on my way out of town. And other than some gang um, tags, that kind of thing. Also, there's an area called Hilltop, and I'm sure you have one in whatever city you're in, because that's the bad area. And I used to actually work in a shelter on Martin Luther King Way and like Sixth Avenue, I think it was. And the women in the shelter, the first 30 days, they were under what you call blackout. They couldn't have any phone calls, they couldn't make any phone calls. They couldn't go anywhere unescorted, and they couldn't have any visitors, just to detox you down, just because you can't just run around be doing the same stuff you want. Have to change, what's that, AA thing, people, places, things. You have to change those things for a while. Then after a while, the girls would, be able to, as they won, more privileges. But they would always want to go to the store or something like that, and I would walk with them because I wasn't afraid of them ganglets. I come from ganglies. I come from Washington D.C., where the real horrible people are. So I wasn't scared of them. But I never had any kind of problems like that working at the shelter. I only had to call the cops like once. Uh, it was very interesting where I worked. It was an 18-month program, because most battered women's shelters or homeless women and children shelters are 30 days. Okay. And unless the day you arrive at the shelter, you get $100,000 a year job right that minute, right that second, you are not going to be self sufficient, have a job, or a place to stay in 30 days. It's not. And I think that's one of the reasons that a lot of times battered women stay with their batterer, because after 30 days they're going to have to go back to him anyway. But the system is so overloaded. But as far as crime out here, most of the crime is meth related. And besides the cops, busting meth, labs where people are cooking it, they also there's a lot of identity theft here, a lot of identity theft. And that's why when I went to Japan, when my son lived in Matsui, we came in the lobby, and he went to check his mail. He just opened the mailbox, and I said, the mailbox aren't locked? And he goes, oh no, the mailboxes aren't locked. And I thought, oh my gosh, we did that in the States, and be so much identity theft, you would never get anything. It'd be terrible if the mailboxes weren't locked. But no, they're not. They weren't locked. And like the mailman over there rides around a little scooter. It's really cool. So I gotta say about working in the shelter. It was 18 months, and that gives you time to do something, because we actually had some of the girls. One of the girls in particular. In my theory, my philosophy is always, I don't care how much money we have to spend, what we have to do. We help one person. It's worth it. It's worth millions to help one woman. And she had ran into some difficulties, got on crack, lost her daughter, and ended up and I think what triggered all of it is, I think her husband died. I think, is, if I recall. And she had, got on crack, and everything just disintegrated, and she had lost her daughter and everything. And by the end of the 18 months, she actually had gone to school to be a checker, had actually gone back to school, actually got housing, got her daughter back. Well, while she was living in the shelter, she got her daughter back because they were supervised. And she really, really was a really good mother. She's a good girl. And a couple of times, I know one woman came in one time, and she I kept calling her by this name. It wasn't her name. What had happened was she was homeless, and on drugs, and had had a accident, and had like some kind of something had happened to her ankle. She had some kind of cyst or growth or something, and people who are homeless are not the cleanest, and sometimes most of them are clean. Most of them are cleaner than some of the people in jobs, But what she had done was she had used her sister's name when she went to the hospital. Probably had warrants or something. And so for the whole time she's there, we're calling her, by her sister's name. Her name's Joe, and we're calling her Sam. By her sister's name. Finally, she told me that that wasn't her name. That she had used her sister's name in the thing, and she was just a mess. Just smelled it. Oh my God, what a mess! She couldn't even cook. She couldn't cook, and the girls would have the girls would have um, chores, so one person's turn was clean the bathroom, one person's turn was to clean the common areas, one person's job was to clean, wash the dishes after dinner, and one person's, job, made a little detailed thing would be to cook, and she couldn't cook. And everybody was like, and it was funny because at the shelter, you knew who could cook, you know when to stay for dinner. You know when to stay for dinner. You could look on the detail roster and go, okay, so and so's cooking tonight. We can stay for dinner. And then we'd stay and eat, and I'd take my son a plate. But um, that was very rewarding work. But a lot of people that work in nonprofit are not um, good people and are not sane people. I mean, the people who work in nonprofit a lot of times don't have it all together. And we just so happen to work for the executive director, such a woman. Um, she was stealing and was allegedly, I'm sorry, she was stealing. And when we had a special account, because of course you can't give the girls couldn't have any money of their own. What they would do was, if they were getting a welfare check because they had kids or something, or they were getting disability or something like that, what would happen is we would give them, would pay their rent if they could afford to pay it there to the shelter, and then give them the rest of it. Like if they put it in the bank for them, so they could come and get $10 at a time or $20 at a time or whatever they were going to do with it. But they couldn't have money because that's trouble. So if they in that way we could watch out for it for them. They handle their money for them. She was stealing the grant money. I was writing grants for my own salary, and I wasn't getting paid because she was stealing the money. And what ended up happening was I was, well, kind of liking this lawyer, and he had done some work for some pro bono work for some of the girls at the shelter, and I really kind of liked him, but he ended up being a dingaling. But he sent his secretary over one day um, to, just as a favor, to go through the books because I knew something wasn't right. And she had done all the FICA and all the tax work for this law firm that he was associated with. And while the executive director was gone one day, I had her come in and go, check this out for me, and she was like, ooh. And that's when we found out she was allegedly stealing the money. But what actually got her in trouble, she could kind of, finagle around. One day I got a telephone call from one of the foundations, because, I was the grant writer, that's what I did. And I had written a grant to, I guess it doesn't matter, I could say Warehouser. And someone called me from the foundation, and it just so happened the executive director's first name and my first name were the same. And the lady asked for, blank, blank. And I went, yeah, yeah, and I'm still talking to the lady thinking it's about the grant. No, the executive director had bought a house with the grant money because, of course, she had, And the funny thing about it was she had most nonprofits. I don't know how much you guys know about it, but most nonprofits um they have well, all of them. They have a board of trustees, and what she and the board of trustees is supposed to overlook the executive director. I have been on the board of trustees of nonprofit organizations myself, and the board kind of overlooks and sees what's going on. But what she did was she filled the board of trustees with yes men, basically, and they were all enamored. Everybody thought she was this great woman. So after blank blanks secretary, hipped us to what was going on, she just looked at me and the other girl that worked there, because it was only like three people in the staff. The executive director, we had a nun that was chilling with us, she was cool, and me and another girl. And she just looked at us and went, come on, y'all. This is not good. This is not good. I would advise you to get out of here. And just so lucky, thank goodness, that I did end up getting out of there. But a few years later, what ended up happening, how I found out, we were under the Martin Luther King Ecumenical Center, because some nonprofits have to be under another association if they're too small or new, or just like to handle their money, handle their affairs and stuff like that. And you give them a percentage for kind of like a, I don't know, agent or something. I don't know. No, well, no, like a business manager, I guess you would say. And I had, quit that job, had a really good job at Davita, and was doing some other things, had forgotten all about it. And one afternoon, I don't know why I was home, but I was home from work for some reason, and I don't know. And I saw this advertisement, not advertisement, news flash, that the shelter was closing. And I went, ooh, what the heck happened, So I called the Martin Luther King Center, signifying, being nosy. Yeah. Oh, well, is it anything? What happened? And the woman who answered the phone was telling me, that they caught her. They had caught her, and what they were doing was, on this news flash, they were showing, pregnant women, and women who actually were in the shelter, who just were out on the streets because this woman was, and later on, I found out that she had actually been in mental hospitals. And what I had found out was that the reason she started the shelter was because she was so abusive to her own daughter, her blood daughter, that her daughter never spoke to her again, had run away from home and never spoke to her again. So I guess this was a way of compensating for it. And a lot of people in nonprofit, we find that a lot of people in nonprofit, a lot of them are adult children alcoholics. A lot of them uh, a lot of them have had, mental illness and different problems like that. So, she had the idea of starting a shelter, I guess, to, compensate for what she did to her daughter. But, and once I remember um, her telling me that when she beat her daughter, she would make her daughter kneel down and put her hands up behind her, clasp her hands behind her head like that. And I remember thinking, "Ew." I guess you thought that was old Southern justice, but I don't know, discipline. A lot of people have that. I never played those games. I never hit my son. I figured, if you have to hit a person that's that small, then that's you. That little 12-pound person did nothing. I don't care what it was to deserve to be hit by 100 and 60-pound person. That makes no sense to me. I never understood that. And plus, when you spank kids, we were spanked, and all they do is get to be sneaky. It doesn't make them better people. It just makes them sneaky and liars, so they don't get hit. And if you hit anybody, they're going to do what you tell them to do. you know I mean, it, it's just common sense. But a lot of people, powerless people, beat children. And I found that, especially when I was coming up, in the late 50s, early 60s, a lot of and even now, a lot of black parents beat their kids, and I call it the shit. I don't, you know, rolls downhill. They go out and in the life and world and everything's bad, and the only person they can come home and take it out on is their kids. So I'm sure we got plenty of taking it out on you because I can't tell my boss to kiss my beatings. You ain't done anything, but that's okay. That's okay. That's okay too. I stop. What the thing of it is you stop the cycle. I stopped the cycle. I was not gonna. It was. I didn't even yell at my son. If I was talking above this level, if I got any louder, that you're yelling, because he wasn't used to it. He's not gonna hit his kids. So that kind of cycle stops. You gotta stop that stuff. So when the executive director said that to me, that's when, and what really turned me against her, because I just thought she was nuts at first, but what really turned me against her, we had a woman, this was in the late 90s, and HIV was really coming to the forefront, and we had one of the counselors bring a woman in who had HIV, and she was talking to the women, and this particular woman had, I mean, nobody deserves to get AIDS, but she actually had been married, and her husband cheated on her, and that's how she got it. So she came and she spoke to the girls, about her regime and the different things that she had to go. I also had I pulled in a couple of favors. I knew a couple of life coaches, so I had a couple of them come in and speak to the girls. But this particular woman was brought in by one of our one of the counselors, and she um, talked to the women. She got ready, and she left, and me and the other girl who were working there, we said, wow, wow, that's crazy. Wow, that's nuts. And the executive director said, well, that's what she got for messing with that man, because she hated men. She just hated men. So she was a very disturbed person. And that what happens to a lot of people out there working for other people, is that you, especially in nonprofit, you run into some very, very unwell people. You do. You run into some very, very unwell people, and they're trying to, like I said before, compensate for something they've done or that they've done to somebody, or something like that. And I don't mean people who, like at the missions, or the who have been homeless and then they help the homeless. So I don't mean those kind of people, but there are some very, very unwell people with their own agenda. That's what I think I'm looking for, with their own agenda other than helping people. So um that was one of the I learned my lesson with that. I learned my lesson with that um twice I worked for a black person, and twice I got screwed over. So that won't happen again. I don't, the first time it happened was in Washington D.C. I just had my son; he was like 2, and it was the very first job that I went to. That I got, while I was looking for another job, I got this little job um store, and the guy just thought I was his slave. 5 minutes before I'm walking, get ready to walk out the door. I need you to stay 15 more minutes, and then he'd take off, and be gone for hours and hours and hours. And another, like I said again, drugs. And also, do I have time for this? Do I have to? Yeah, I'll tell you. Um, there was this girl when I was in high school. I admired her so much. She was beautiful, she was light skinned, she had this long brown hair, she had a boyfriend, she had all the fun friends, and everything. And of course, at the time, I didn't realize that, I mean, because I never drank till I was, 18. I never smoked dope or anything till I was like 18. I was old, when I got started. And so I didn't know about people being on drugs, and I didn't know about people being okay, I'm gonna have to stop because I don't want to be in the middle of the story. So I will stop here and then finish the rest of the story, and then I'll change clothes.